where do we go from here? So that's 2023, and if you're in the game of creating health tech solutions, it feels a little bit like that sugar rush of capital and excitement has waned a little bit. Probably remember back in 2020 and 2021, the world was hungry for innovative ways to deliver healthcare, and it had the money to do it. It kind of feels like the world's a little bit in wait and see mode with investors and executives and clinic owners, but Australia still needs a lot of innovative health tech solutions. So what do you do? Today I'm on my way from Sydney to Melbourne to chat with Dr. Buzz Palmer and Makenzie Thomas from MedTech Actuator in Melbourne. And in this episode we talk about market dynamics, what's changed since 2022 in healthcare and in startups, how do you raise capital in these markets, and where do founders find resources. And how can a health tech startup take off in 2023? Collaboration starts with a conversation, Team Health Tech. Let's make it happen.
This is Talking Health Tech with me, Peter Birch, featuring content and community about technology in healthcare.
Buzz and Makenzie, how are you?
Yeah, doing well.
Yeah, really good. I mean, we should point out, Peter, this is a first time for Makenzie. She's a podcast virgin. This is the inaugural moment.
Yeah,
There was a little snippet.
Yeah, last year. This is the first full episode.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Full on, right front and center, and we'll get to chat here in the MedTech Actuator studio that we've created. So, look, it's great to have you on the show with both Buzz and Makenzie. For those that don't know, because Buzz, we spoke on the podcast about 185 years ago, and that was about medtech generally, but not so much about. I'd love to know from your side about what you're up to now with MedTech Actuator in 2023.
Yeah, look, it's been a really interesting ride for us. We're entering our 5th birthday, so we started in 2018. And, we started with our flagship program, which is the Accelerator, which, of course, we still run to this day. And we've had 66 startups come through there. So we've got a fairly hefty portfolio of really high-quality, exciting, health-based startups coming through that. And we're launching the Cohort 8 this year. But over that time, we've expanded into Singapore. We're running programs out of Singapore. We're now moving into Japan. We're running programs out of Japan. We're working with Spain. We're working with India. We're working with Vietnam. There's some other European countries working with. So really, we're really pushing what we think are the boundaries of medtech innovation in the region. It's not just Australia, but the Asia Pacific. We think there's a huge hunting ground of opportunity driving from countries within this region, with the global context, of course. And so we're really trying to position ourselves as an Asia Pacific organization to drive innovation from clinicians, from researchers, from garage inventors, and sort of capitalize that opportunity with programmatic elements.
Yeah, no, I get that vibe too, seeing a lot of the content that goes out and the support you provide. And what's interesting too is you've got both this Asia Pacific region feel, but also quite a localized, presence here in Victoria specifically. A lot of great support to startups and the medtech community here in Victoria.
You're right. I mean, Victoria's quite unique in so many ways. It's not to say that other states aren't, but we're sort of Victoria born and bred, and so we get great support here from the government, from LaunchVic, and from other partners. But with this national plus regional context, but there's so much opportunity here. I think. I mean, what we've seen over the last few years is this general openness towards healthcare. People being more aware of healthcare. People wanting to get more involved in healthcare, whether it's from professional or from personal perspectives. And so, Victoria's a great place. It's a very open community here. Everyone's willing to participate and to help and open up their black books of information, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, gotcha. And Makenzie, there's a number of different programs that MedTech Actuator run as well. Did you want to talk to me a little bit more about the types of programs that are run throughout the year?
Yeah, so essentially we run a handful of different programs in Australia and then also out of Singapore as well. But essentially we have our flagship accelerator program. So this is our main kind of commercialization vehicle that really supports early stage innovation coming out of medical spaces. So it can be from clinicians, researchers, anyone innovating in healthcare. And what we provide is a bespoke model of support for those teams. So it's typically a 12-month journey with us where they'll come in, they run through intensive sprints, they learn the ins and outs of medical commercialization, and then from there they have access to an investment opportunity as well as specific industry support, connections to mentors, connections to industry partners like product development companies, but also a community of founders who are doing the same thing and going through the journey of building a startup. So you're not facing that alone, and you have a soundboard to fall back on. You have our team and you have the other teams around you. So it's a really great program for anyone out there. And specifically, applications are open for that at the moment, and the cohort kicks off in May. So, yeah, if you are interested, reach out to us. And then we also run a series of other programs. So we have MedTech Actuator Origin, which is all about the foundations of, where do founders come from and where do these innovations emerge from. It's about your origin story, as Buzz likes to say. So that program is a short... Wolverine. That program is a shorter program that we run towards the end of the year and really helps people dip their toes into the innovation space and see if the startup space is right for them. They can pressure test their ideas and take that to the market, get a bit of feedback, learn the basics, and figure out what the next steps are before they really dive into their startups and want to take that, turbocharge that journey through something else like the accelerator. We also run scholarship programs for researchers. So if you are a researcher or a clinician or in an academic setting and you're kind of thinking about commercialization or you have a project and you're looking at, what could I do? How could I get this into the market? That program essentially takes you through the journey. You get to see some startups do that from the sidelines. You don't have to get up on a stage and pitch your idea to investors or anything like crazy scary like that, but you can kind of go, what would this journey be like for me, and how could I do that and make that fit in with my career and what I want to achieve. So that's a really, really fun program for people interested in the commercialization space. And then we also have a number of programs that run out of our Singapore office, so looking at helping companies tap into international markets. So dive into the Singapore markets, learn the landscape, touch base with the ecosystem, wrap their head around those foundations and really make some traction as they try to scale internationally. And then we also do run that sort of in reverse, so coming back to Australia. We're doing it in other places as well this year. And then, of course, we run Origin in Japan. We did that last year, which was really cool. We were kind of the only tourists who got to go into Japan for a little bit there running the program. So it was really fun. And we worked with a handful of really great founders from the Japanese medical innovation space, which was, quite different. Japanese entrepreneurship is a little bit different to Australian entrepreneurship. The capacity for risk, how the culture works. It was quite an eye-opening experience. Did I miss anything?
Nothing, right? No, that's good. That's good. That was a great insight. I'm learning myself. So this is great. Now I'm familiar with our
all the progress.
It's very good.
Now
that's
you
good.
can pitch it. Nice.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up all those different stages that founders could be at and organizations could be, because we're at an interesting time right now being in 2023. I guess one could say you've come off the back of a lot of excitement and interest and awareness around technology and healthcare and potentially a lot of investment opportunities. But then as we move into more kind of an economic climate of, people talk about recessions or inflation and difficult to everyone's tightening their belts and discretionary spend and blah, blah, blah. It's a challenging time to be operating a business. And I imagine also for a startup, let alone a health tech startup, what are you seeing as, the current sentiment in 2023 when it comes to startups and healthcare?
It's a really interesting question. You'll ask that question to 10 different people and you get 10 different answers. So there's a lot of kind of predictions, and we know it's a market cycle. So we know for the next 6 months we're going to see something a little bit different, a little bit tightening of belts. And we're starting to see it perhaps in the angel investment space. So individuals that are investing are certainly sort of pulling back just a little bit, just to make sure that they've got their own cash flow and checking their savings, interest, inflation, all this sort of thing is happening. And so there's a little bit of difficulty there. But in healthcare, I mean, the advantage that the healthcare startups have is that they're driving impact, and so there's this other area of funding capability around in that impact investment space. And of course, we're seeing a lot of family offices, impact groups now moving towards investment into startups rather than just philanthropy into startups. And so this is a movement we've been seeing over the last few years, and I would say in the last 2 years we're seeing the doors open more significantly with that as well. And so if you can identify what impact you're bringing to human society. And it's not about deprivation. Traditionally, impact's been around deprivation with humans. Now it's about actually, if we're doing a new cancer diagnostic, then it's available to everybody in the world. That's true human flourishing impact. Yeah. And so those gates have been opened, and there's some wonderful opportunities out there for startups. The venture capital space is also interesting. There's a lot of capital around. We are seeing a slowing of investment coming through. But in saying that, the startups in our portfolio are raising, and they're raising fairly big sums as well. So I think part of it is being prepared and having a good understanding about the market dynamics, but also having a good understanding about what those venture capitalists are looking for and how they're looking for it and the time frames in which they're looking for it. And so we're not. So yes, we are seeing a slowing in the angel and so the pre-seed and the seed stages, but certainly the venture capital, we're not really seeing that as of yet. And yet the prediction is we're going to see a real tightening of that space. Maybe that will happen, and maybe next few months we'll see that. But right now we're not seeing it yet.
Yeah, a lot of crystal balling there, and that does happen within the ecosystem. I'm interested too, given that you've got a growing presence and awareness in the Asia Pacific region as well. Is this the same sentiment outside of Australia too?
Well, it's a little bit different, and partly it's different because of the way that governments are also involved in some of those incentives that are around in other regions. So here in Australia, we've got some great sovereign funds. They're slow, they're risk averse, and we're not quite seeing the impact of those in the community just yet. And hopefully that will happen this year. But in other countries, so Singapore, of course, there's great initiatives that governments put forward to support venture capitalists and angels to contribute to startups. You see a much larger contribution of individual investors, high net worths, family offices in the Singapore region. Interestingly, I heard that in the last 2 years, 1,200 family offices have moved from Hong Kong and China over to Singapore. So you've got a much greater breadth of family offices now in that particular space. So a great area to try and raise capital. So we're not seeing a slowing down there as of yet. The interesting one for us is Japan. So Japan has traditionally been a fairly closed market. It's been very difficult to get access to Japan, and you find technologies in Japan that are just in Japan. They don't have this kind of global context, and this is kind of mind-boggling in so many ways. But they also realized that in the 1990s, they were the tech kings of the world. Everybody wanted to be Japan. And in 2020, well, they've been overtaken by so many different countries. Their innovation is in decline. And so they're having to take a very different strategy to how they approach innovation, how they think about not just medical innovation, but innovation in general. So you're seeing a huge amount of influence from governments coming into the venture capital space, coming into the angel space. You're seeing incentives, both capital and infrastructural incentives coming through. So they're trying to do something a little bit different. There's lots of barriers, of course, language, culture, regulatory. There's all these different kinds of barriers coming through. But what we are seeing, certainly in areas of Singapore and Japan, is a much greater drive towards consumer medtech. So this idea that individuals are taking charge of their own healthcare, and they've got technologies there to support that in a far more sophisticated way than we have here in Australia right now. And so they're seeing these technologies that are coming through that are driven by the consumer market. So they're driven by individuals purchasing, buying, advancing the need or the want of these technologies in a far more sophisticated way. And so that's really very exciting. And so here in Australia, we're also seeing this move towards consumer healthcare, consumer HealthTech, whatever you want to call it. Whether Australia is ready to adopt that just yet, I'm not so sure. But there's lots of other countries in this region that are. Yeah. And they're set up slightly differently.
That's really interesting about the consumer-facing healthcare stuff because you think typically, like you say, in Australia, whether we've fully adopted that type of thinking and that trajectory is there, often that conversation goes to, well, who's going to pay for it? The funding's not there, and that's not how the healthcare system is remunerated. Is there a remuneration thing in Japan that means that type of thing is covered more, or is it something else?
I don't think so. I think it's possibly around the way that the Japanese culture is to technology and maybe how motivated, or not necessarily for the remuneration, but motivated they are around healthcare, and with their aging population as well, I think they've faced a lot of the challenges that Australia and other nations will face in the coming years and coming decades. And so they're aware of those challenges, possibly before the pandemic, and are now looking to solve those and then turning to startups or innovation to, answer a lot of the problems that they have within their own culture. They've also, interestingly, a couple of things we found out when we were looking into this Japanese landscape is, their risk aversion and their attitude towards investment was quite different, and that posed some really interesting challenges with working with them as their startup ecosystem. Typically the Japanese startups like to go to IPO really early, and so going into that space, they're looking to exit their startups as soon as possible and get listed on the Japanese stock exchange. So it's a really different space, and so I'm not quite sure exactly about how the sort of healthcare works in that landscape and how the attitudes are. But it's really interesting.
I hear you about the cultural thing, because I would agree that seems quite culturally aligned with how they would operate in Japan too. So it's reassuring, at least to think from a healthcare provider's perspective, that it doesn't necessarily always come back to, like, the funding piece is really important, but there are other factors too to consider when looking at launching your startup into particular markets, in understanding the dynamics within the culture, like the opportunity that exists there. So being aware of what's around and having useful resources will be really important too, but that can be overwhelming in itself from a founder's perspective, knowing where to look for this kind of information. But where does a founder go to get resources and get across what's happening in different parts of the health tech ecosystem?
I think when you look specifically at health tech, there's a few really great resources. Obviously, listening to Talking Health Tech is a great place to start.
That's number one, right? That's where we start.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's top of the list.
It took us 10 minutes to get there, but we got to find. That's good. No.
Started at first, resources that are available. There's quite a few really great healthcare-focused podcasts. If you are particularly a startup in the space, and in Australia, speaking specifically, we have, fantastic What the Health community as well is a really great space. I feel that finding people who are doing something similar to what you're looking to do, or at least have the openness to innovation and to startups and are interested in that area, you can jump into that kind of wave and ride that for a little while and, meet other people and get those connections. So What the Health is a really great community. They also have a fantastic list of just a list of resources for healthcare startups. If you can dig that up, it's sort of a Google Doc that's been around for a while, but that has everything you need to know about where to go and find resources. But there's also, depending on where you are within the startup ecosystem, there are particular programs that are specific. So at MedTech Actuator, we work with a lot of regulated devices, wearables, diagnostic tools, things used in allied health and hospital settings. And so that's our bread and butter. We also have expanded that definition to include health tech and a bit of biotech in recent years as the market's shifted. But if you have a disability tech, then it makes sense for you to turn to Remarkable, who are based in Sydney. They have a fantastic set of programs and advisors for people in the disability space. And then there are also, female-led programs that you can go to. So FemTech Collective, if you do have something more in that space, also Sydney-based, but a global network. And then there's heaps of others that are out there. If you're a diverse founder, there's Anyone Can programs that provide opportunities for people who are coming from diverse backgrounds as well. So depending on where you fit, what you're doing in the ecosystem, there's a lot of different resources out there. But tap into the networks and tap into the people. You'll be surprised to find where a LinkedIn DM can go, or a membership to, What the Health or Talking Health Tech can do. And then you kind of just keep rolling from one to the other. That's what I love about the startup space. Everyone wants to pass you on to someone. It's really nice.
It is quite collaborative. Yeah, no, that's really good. And through the lens of thinking about, I guess, putting all that into perspective and thinking about Accelerate coming up. So there could be founders that are at a particular stage. I've heard that the Accelerator is open to apply. Remind me who it's for and what they're going to get out of it, and all the details when they need to get their applications in, all the bits and pieces.
I can take this one. As the program manager, I can take this one. So Essentially, yeah, the accelerator is open to anyone with a healthcare innovation that's at that sort of TRL 4 stage. So we're looking at...
For those that don't know, what's TRL 4?
So that's around sort of when you're bench testing, early stage bench testing, and then when you have a decent proof of concept, essentially. So we're looking for people who are able to identify that they have a good problem solution fit. So they've identified a clinical need out in the healthcare world, and they really want to innovate within that space, and they have a solution that fits that need. And so they're able to speak to who their customer is. They don't need to know everything. We absolutely don't expect people to come in with fully formed pitch decks and ready to ask for investment or anything. But you need to understand the basics around what you're trying to take to the market. And so we're looking at it can be anyone, really. If you've had a personal experience with an issue, we see a lot of people coming from that space. They might have a healthcare background, they might have worked in the sector before, but maybe they have a lived experience. Possibly it could be an academic or a researcher, someone who's looking to commercialize a project that they've been working on for a long time, a subject matter expert. But yeah, essentially an array of different people from all different walks of life, but having a good sense of the technology that they're trying to drive and an idea of where they want to take it, but also an understanding that they need support and that they are ready to learn and to really take that to the next level. So someone who has the capacity to commit to a long-term program. So as I said earlier, it's 12 months long. It's flexible in how you commit to it, and we expect that people would have team members to help manage the workload, to lean on. But essentially, we run the first 6 months we do sprints. So these are typically 3 days long on the first week of every month. And we'll take you through sort of all the ins and outs. It can be everything from, how do you build a team? What are those core elements that you need to have sorted out within your team before you move forward, to what is your regulatory pathway and what's your strategy behind that, and as well as reimbursement. We look at product development depending on what you're developing. We can also look at, do you have to have a more detailed technology strategy if you are building a sort of health tech solution? And many, many more topics within that. That's a very, very brief overview, and Buzz could probably add in more if you want to throw in something.
Well, I mean, just very quickly, I think it's worth pointing out it's a venture development accelerator. So lots of accelerators around knowledge development. So we can give you a textbook of information and you're expected to do something with that. You're meant to act on that. It doesn't work in entrepreneurship and startups. You can, if you want to play soccer, you could read every possible book in the world on soccer. It doesn't mean you're going to go into a pitch and be able to be a world-class soccer player. However, in startups, you need to be a world-class entrepreneur, right? There's this expectation that you've got to be able to do it. So it really the accelerator is about venture development and skills development. We teach you how to be an entrepreneur, how to be a founder, how to commercialize technology, and not just give you the theory behind it. Because that's the key difference, I think. We can all read a book, but actually doing it is something very different.
Yes, absolutely. And as you were saying that too, I'm like, well, this is quite a specific kind of, pocket that we're talking about, but that's quite good, and that's why you've got different programs, because sometimes there can be quite a broad reach, like a general kind of thing, but then you've got participants who are at different stages. They haven't even started their thing through to, they've done a round of funding, and then it's hard to kind of relate. But if you're going through the journey with others, that makes it a bit easier. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's a lot of really generalist programs out there that are fantastic, and that you can get, some non-dilutive equity funding through, or if you're attached to a university, like definitely have a look at the startup spaces there. But if you want something that connects you to the industry, that provides you, access to investment that is focused on healthcare, that also has a group of founders also in healthcare, then MedTech Actuate is a really great place for that. And you get that bespoke model, and you get that support to move forward in a really structured and strategic way.
Nice. Lastly, bring us home, Buzz, thinking about then putting a cap on it, thinking about 2023 with startup founders, looking ahead at the calendar, feeling a little bit more reassured now that they've heard your dulcet tones telling them about the ecosystem.
Dulcet tones, is that right? Do you want me to pick it up a little bit?
Let's hear some of that FM radio from back in the UK. But summarise then the outlook for 2023. What should founders be focusing on and startups in the healthcare space in 2023 to really thrive?
Yeah, look, I think 2023 is going to be a very exciting year. Yes, we're starting off with some awkward market dynamics, but actually we're still coming out of this pandemic moment. So there's still a genuine appetite to draw down on opportunities within this space. Megan from St. Vincent often says that post-war and post-pandemic, you see a decade of innovation, and that's usually health innovation. We're right at the precipice of that right now. We're starting to see capital markets open. We're starting to see countries open. We're starting to see people more aware of the healthcare systems. And so I think we will see a drive in adoption of technologies and adoption of new opportunities in the healthcare space. The investment space is going to be a little bit drier, I think. We just have to accept the fact that the next few months are going to be a little bit turmoil, a little bit uncertain. And so founders just really need to perhaps broaden a little bit their expectations, broaden their access, and open up new networks as well.
Amazing. Well, look, Buzz, Makenzie, I appreciate you making the time to have a chat with me. We'll put the details for Accelerate in the show notes of this episode or in the comments below for people to check out and get in touch as well, and check out the MedTech Actuator presence on the Talking HealthTech website as well. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to chatting again on the show soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
For more content and community about technology and healthcare, visit talkinghealthtech.com.